Good to have you with us. You're watching Arirang News. I'm Na Hyun-kyung in Seoul. These are the stories making headlines at this hour. U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert is injured in a knife attack. He is in stable condition and undergoing treatment at a local hospital. The primary suspect is in police custody. President Park Geun-hye is now on the third leg of her four-nation tour to the Middle East. The president is said to be seeking to strengthen and diversify economic ties with Abu Dhabi. And Korea's 2014 inflation rate is found to have been lower than that of Japan's for the first time in 40 years. Concerns about deflationary pressure rise once again. And first, we start with the shocking knife attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert. The injuries are not life-threatening, but he's currently undergoing treatment at Yonsei Severance Hospital in northwestern Seoul. Now, Arirang's Hwang Sung-hee is standing by there to give us more details. Sung-hee, what can you tell us?
Yes, Hyun-kyung, the Yonsei Severance Hospital here has just confirmed that the surgery to treat the ambassador's wounds has just ended and that he is in a stable condition. Now, the attack came at around 7:45 a.m. Korea time, pretty early in the morning, as Ambassador Lippert was attending a breakfast meeting just across the street from the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. Lippert was waiting to give a speech when a man attacked him with a 25-centimeter long blade. Now, the ambassador was cut on his right cheek and on his arm and was bleeding heavily when he was transferred by a waiting police car to a nearby hospital. Now, we have been hearing from those who were at the site. They report hearing a loud scream as they were waiting for the meeting to begin and say that the ambassador's face was covered with blood as he made his way out, as you can see on the pictures we have on the screen. Now, the suspect was arrested immediately.
So at this point, do we know anything about what might have motivated the suspect? We are getting reports that it's not the first time that he has carried out this kind of an individual attack.
Yes, the man has been identified as being in his 50s and named Kim Ki-jong. Witnesses say that just after slashing the ambassador, he identified himself and said that South and North Korea must reunify. He also yelled that he opposes war just before he was bustled into a police car. Now, it's known that Kim protested the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington that began this week. Kim claims that he was invited to the event and that he has been planning this attack for about 10 days now. And yes, like you said, Hyun-kyung, he is the same man who threw pieces of concrete at the Japanese ambassador to Korea back in 2010.
And of course, the South Korean government as well as the U.S. were very quick to react to such a senseless attack, right?
U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said that Washington strongly condemns this act of violence, but said that the ambassador's injuries are not life-threatening. Now, the ambassador is also a very close friend of President Barack Obama and has received a personal phone call from the president, according to the U.S. National Security Council. Seoul's foreign ministry released a statement saying it finds the attack on the U.S. ambassador, South Korea's closest ally, deeply regrettable and that such an act cannot be tolerated. It said it will bolster security measures for diplomatic missions in Seoul. And since taking office in October last year, Ambassador Lippert has really been passionate about Korea, Korean culture and its people, and extremely approachable and friendly with the media and very, very active on Twitter. And that's why this attack, which is the first on a U.S. ambassador to Seoul, has really taken everyone by surprise. I will keep you updated as the story develops. This has been Hwang Sung-hee reporting live from Yonsei Severance Hospital.
All right, thank you very much, Sung-hee. We do appreciate your updates. Now, President Park Geun-hye, who's currently in the Middle East, said the attack on the U.S. ambassador resulted not only in a physical injury to the ambassador, but was also an unacceptable attack on the Seoul-Washington alliance. The president, who was appalled upon hearing about the incident roughly half an hour after it occurred, expressed her hope for a prompt recovery for Ambassador Lippert and expressed her regret to his family and the U.S. president. The Korean government says it will do all that's necessary to resolve the case in close cooperation with the U.S. And now moving on to President Park's trip to the Middle East. She is now in the United Arab Emirates. As she did in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, the president is expected to press ahead with her plans to expand economic cooperation in the Middle East. Arirang's presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun sends us this report from Abu Dhabi.
This is President Park's second visit to Abu Dhabi in less than a year. She was here last May to mark an installation of a Korean-made nuclear reactor built under a 2009 bilateral agreement. The reactor at the Barakah nuclear plant site, some 300 kilometers west of Abu Dhabi, is part of a $19 billion contract Korea won to build 4 nuclear plants in the Gulf nation by the year 2020. It's Korea's first ever nuclear reactor export. President Park's previous trip had to be brief because it came only 1 month after the Seoul ferry disaster. This time, she plans to carry out her diplomacy in full force to strengthen Seoul's cooperation with Abu Dhabi in nuclear energy, infrastructure, and healthcare. In an interview with the UAE's official news agency, President Park stressed Korea and the UAE will be able to enjoy shared prosperity if they bolster economic ties in such high value-added areas. In that respect, the Korean president said the Barakah plant project has laid the groundwork for two-way cooperation for the next 100 years. She added the two sides have complementary strengths: Korea in manufacturing, ICT and healthcare, the UAE in energy, finance and capital. President Park then said she hoped to go beyond the economy to bolster security cooperation with the UAE, as peace and stability in the two sides' respective regions, Northeast Asia and the Middle East, are crucial to their prosperity. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
As U.S. and Japanese officials meet in Tokyo on a trade deal called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, political analysts in Korea have made claims about events leading up to the talks. They say that recent controversial comments made by a senior U.S. official were aimed at buttering up Japan ahead of the negotiations. Arirang's Connie Kim has more.
Delegations from the U.S. and Japan are meeting in Tokyo on Thursday for talks over a regional free trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The two nations have reportedly reached consensus on some of the most sensitive items, such as automobile and agricultural products, and they're pushing to conclude the talks before Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to Washington in late April or early May. The TPP meeting is garnering extra attention as it follows some controversial remarks made last week by a senior U.S. official. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman said political leaders should not exploit nationalist feelings and earn cheap applause by vilifying a former enemy. The comments sparked outrage in Seoul with Korean officials, saying Washington was letting Japan get away with whitewashing its wartime atrocities. The State Department later clarified that Sherman's comments did not indicate a shift in Washington's stance on the historical tensions in Northeast Asia. However, pundits point out that the remark comes at a time when the U.S. is trying to strengthen its ties with Tokyo, with the TPP deal near the top of its to-do list. For the U.S., the TPP is an effort to increase its economic influence in the Asia-Pacific region to counter China's growing presence. On the Japanese side, analysts say that by concluding the trade pact, Abe would have a better chance to speak before U.S. Congress during his planned visit to Washington. That possibility is a controversial one, however, as the Japanese leader is expected to promote Japan as a country that has followed a peaceful path since the end of World War II. Adding to concerns, Japan appears to have shifted its stance on its relations with Korea. Tokyo's Foreign Affairs Ministry has removed a sentence from its website that said Korea was a country that shares Japan's basic thoughts on freedom, democracy, and economic issues. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And North Korea had something to say about Wendy Sherman's comments. The regime has made some sarcastic remarks accusing South Korea of trying really hard to cover up what Sherman said. The North's propaganda website 우리민족끼리 said it pitied Seoul for taking sides with Washington's efforts to clarify Sherman's remarks, calling the situation a tragic comedy. It said South Korea should officially complain about the remarks, adding that they were aimed at pressing for a stronger trilateral military alliance between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington. In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyung-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Korea's inflation rate last year was lower than that of Japan's for the first time in more than 40 years. Low inflation is one of the key signs that the economy is losing its vitality, and this is raising concerns. Here's Son Jung-in with more.
Korea's inflation rate stood at 1.3% in 2014, almost 1.5 percentage points lower than that recorded by Japan. It's the first time since 1973 that Korean consumer prices grew slower than Japan's. While Japan's inflation rate was buoyed by a weak yen and a sales tax hike, prices in Korea remained flat due to a drop in petrochemical products and agricultural goods. But it's not just Japan where prices grew faster than Korea, prompting concerns that the domestic economy might be nearing a Japan-style deflation. Korea's consumer prices were even below the OECD average of 1.7% and the average price growth rate of 1.6% of G7 countries, including Canada and the United States. The Korean government, however, has dismissed concerns over deflation risks, saying the country's core inflation rate stood at over 2.3% last month compared to the same period a year ago. For all of last year, the core inflation rate, which excludes volatile energy and food prices, grew by 2% from 2013. An unnamed finance ministry official says that the government so far has no specific plans to tackle the country's low price trend. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
China has lowered its economic growth target for 2015 to the lowest target in 11 years amid worries the country could face greater financial challenges this year. In an annual report to the National People's Congress on Thursday, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said the country's gross domestic product growth target at around 7% this year. The figure is down from the 7.5% target the government set for 2014 and lower than the actual growth of 7.4%, marking the slowest expansion in 24 years. As for the country's defense budget, China aims to increase it by roughly 10% compared to last year. And now to the second of our three-part series looking at China's economy. Today we focus on how the economic slowdown in China is affecting the Korean economy. Arirang's Hwang Sung-hee has the story, and she starts by giving us some export figures.
Korea's exports to China dropped by almost 0.5% last year, a stark contrast from the average annual growth of over 20% from 2000 to 2008 and 14% after the global financial crisis. It used to be global demand that determined Korea's exports to China, as Korean firms largely ship intermediary goods to the country. The situation now, however, is quite different.
A majority of intermediary goods exported to China for assembly are now consumed within China. So Korea's exports to China are more affected by the demand in that country than in other nations like the US or the EU.
A recent report shows that a 1 percentage point drop in Chinese growth equals a 0.17 percentage point cut in Korea's GDP. And with China posting its worst growth in 24 years in 2014, prompting the government to focus on boosting domestic consumption, experts say that old business strategies will no longer work.
The consumer market will continue to expand in China, so in the long term, Korean exporters should look into what kind of consumer goods will meet the needs of the Chinese people.
What's even more unsettling is that Chinese firms are now improving their own supply capacity to replace Korean intermediary goods. Many key Korean industries are concerned that their main export items like display screens, steel, and petrochemical products will get squeezed out of China within the next few years. Such changing landscape has raised the urgency for Korean exporters to produce high-quality finished goods catering to China's changing demand. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And moving on to the tech realm, there's one market that's being hit hard by bigger and better quality smartphone screens. That's the tablet PC market. The tablet sales of major players in the market like Samsung, Apple, and Amazon all plunged in the final 3 months of last year. Park Ji-won has the details.
The global tablet market saw its first ever on-year drop in sales during the last quarter of 2014. According to market research firm IDC, tablet sales dropped 3.2% in the fourth quarter from the previous year. This is the first sales drop in the global tablet sector since the devices were introduced in 2010. Apple sold some 21 million units of its iPad during the fourth quarter of last year, a decline of nearly 18% from the same period in 2013. Samsung sold 11 million tablets during the same period, a drop of more than 18%. Amazon suffered a whopping 70% drop during the same period. Only China's Lenovo recorded positive growth of about 9% in the fourth quarter from the year before, thanks to marketing and sales strategies like selling its laptops alongside its tablets. Industry watchers say the popularity of large-screen smartphones like the Galaxy Note and iPhone 6 Plus represents an increasing threat to tablets. With the high-end tablet market becoming increasingly saturated, Apple is aiming to expand into the enterprise computing market with the iPad following a partnership deal with IBM last year. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And in health news, the World Health Organization has released a new set of guidelines advising people to consume less sugar. Its recommended amount is less than 10% of your total energy intake. Kim Myung-gil has more.
The World Health Organization says the world is eating too much sugar and advises reducing sugar consumption to 50 grams or 12 teaspoons per day. It says a further reduction to below 5%, which translates to 25 grams or 6 teaspoons, would provide additional health benefits, such as preventing obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay. The guidelines don't apply to the sugars in fruits, vegetables, and milk, since they come with essential nutrients. According to the WHO, the global average for daily sugar intake stood at about 58 grams per person in 2003 and increased to 63 grams in 2013. The UN Health Agency added that the sugars consumed today are mostly hidden in processed foods. For example, 1 tablespoon of ketchup contains around 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of sugar. A single can of soda contains up to 40 grams or 10 teaspoons of sugar. Sugar consumption in Korea is also high. According to the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, Koreans consume at least 60 grams of sugar per day, which is 10 grams more than the WHO's recommendation. Concerns about the possible health effects have prompted the ministry to advise parents to be vigilant about what their children eat and drink. To lend a hand, the ministry has set up centers around the nation to monitor the quality of children's food services. The Center for Children's Food Service Management develops menus for children that are low in sugar, and it recommends that catering companies supply healthy drinks like tea instead of soda. Workers from the center also visit daycare centers and teach children about nutrition as part of a sugar reduction campaign. The Food Ministry says it will continue to work with companies, consumer groups, and academics to find ways to cut the sugar levels in processed foods. Kim Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Well, about a month ago, we talked about Korea's first video artist, Park Hyun-gi, and today our Im Hyun-hee joins us with an in-depth look at the artist and the inspiration behind his work. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee. And I remember us having this conversation about how usually Paik Nam-june is more associated with video art in Korea, but in fact, Park Hyun-gi is the first Korean.
Exactly, Korea's very first video artist, and it's a shame because he really did contribute so much to the development of video art here in Korea. Now, unfortunately, he passed early in 2000, but an archive of over 20,000 pieces and collections from his works were put together, and an exhibition has opened at the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art here in Korea. Take a look.
Where exactly does chaos meet order? The East meet the West. Korea's first video artist, Park Hyun-gi, explored where seemingly polar opposites clash, but also where they can coexist. Video art was a new artistic medium, not just for Park, but also for the world. And as for Park, media became just a tool for an artist bent on finding the place where traditions of Korea could harmonize with the new Western world, and where nature coincides with humanity.
These artworks are on the foundation of nature, but also on Korean traditions. He wanted to find harmony with Western formal language in Korea. Things like rocks, trees, and rivers, they can be found around the world, anywhere you go. And naturally for Park, they became art that harmonizes with humanity.
And nature immediately became his focus, necessary to begin a piece. He would have to go looking for his materials in the great outdoors. The rocks gathered from nature would lead Park to his works, like this video stone tower, a work that would become key pieces to the development of his career, that project the same image as you would expect to see in nature. Park blurs the line between reality and illusion in this low-tech, naturally unnatural work. But his inspiration from nature goes much deeper than the materials he used. Park found a continuous cycle in life, and he conveyed that flow through his video art, each screen capturing another step in the circuit. He found this flowing connected system in the world and the cosmos, but also in his own two hands.
For Park, one of the most important images is the hand. The hand has 5 fingers, but also holds the 5 senses, the 5 elements, and even the universe. The hand is close to you. It's something you use and see every day. So for Park, this was a big part of his search to find harmony in our world.
Park continually strove to think of ways of preserving the traditions of Korea, while still adapting to a rapidly Western and modern world. He was always looking for a unique angle of Korea, and as a result of his perseverance, he just may have found that perfect center.
So Park Hyun-gi took a much different approach from Paik Nam-june when it comes to video art.
Right. So Park Hyun-gi was really known for his low technology approach to video art. So he'd use photography, he'd use like still shots. So he would still use TVs and screens, but he would also, try to keep that style because he felt that was close to his, draw to nature. And so he wanted to keep that flow going.
So then why is Paik Nam-june's work better known and more recognized around the world?
Right, so Paik Nam-june is actually Korean American, and so most of his career was spent abroad, and he did learn as well as mentor artists abroad. But Park Hyun-gi wanted to stay with his Korean roots. He stayed in Korea for his career as well, and so he wanted to incorporate that as well as Korean heritage into his works, and you can really see that stylistic difference in their works. So that's probably one of the reasons why Park Hyun-gi was not as internationally well known as Paik Nam-june.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. A different look at the video artist Park Hyun-gi. Thank you for your report today, Yoon-hee.
You're very welcome.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Temperatures have gone up about 1 to 2 degrees from yesterday, but it still feels very cold due to the continuous wind. Now also today we have the first full moon of the Lunar New Year. Currently we have mostly clear skies nationwide and nothing big will change by the evening, so you'll have a nice view of the full moon. Now the time of the full moon is slightly different depending on where you are. Busan will see it first at 6:02 this evening, while Seoul will get a look at 6:09. Now be sure to check it out and also dress warm as the temperatures are expected to drop tonight. Now looking at the rest of the week, the weather will get much better tomorrow with temperatures getting back to the seasonal averages. And by the weekend, we can expect some spring-like weather conditions. Now checking out the weather conditions for today, Seoul will peak up to 6 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will both get up to 8 degrees. Meanwhile, other regions are looking at Jeju Island. We'll see up to 8 as well. Dokdo hits down to 1, while Mankungang is chillier at -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Arirang News. I'm Na Hyun-kyung in Seoul. I'll be back with all of that and more at 4 p.m. Korea time.